Many times we don't understand the law. Law for the People with Eric Cedillo is here to inform, educate, and answer your legal questions. Thank you for tuning in today. From the law offices of Eric Cedillo, located at 1725 Greenville Avenue in Dallas, Texas, here's your host, Eric Cedillo.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon on Law for the People. As always, joining us on Fridays from 1 to 3. We're always on at that time. Thank you again for joining us. Today we have a couple of special guests. Our first is someone that is running for a trustee, for DISD trustee here in Dallas. And it's, kind of near and dear to my heart because I'm actually a resident of the district that she's running for. So I'm very interested in talking to her about some of her position points and other things. Her name is Mita Havlick. And Mita, why don't you just go ahead and tell the folks who are listening in a little bit about yourself?
Great. Thank you, Eric, and thank you for having me on. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Great opportunity. So as you mentioned, my name is Mita Havlick, and I'll just tell you a little bit about my background. I come from what I've been calling humble beginnings. I was born outside of a rural village in India, and I was born in a hospital, but I came home from the hospital on an ox cart.
Oh, wow.
So the fact that I'm sitting here now talking to you to me, it's a testament to living the American immigrant dream.
Wow, that's amazing.
So yeah, it is amazing, and sometimes I sit back and think how amazing it is. But so the way we ended up in the United States is my dad is an engineer. My father's an engineer, retired now, and he studied in India, and he was recruited by a U.S. firm to move to the U.S. And so when I was 2 years old, my brother was 4, we moved to Aurora, Illinois. And if you've ever seen Wayne's World, you know exactly what Aurora, Illinois looks like. Lived in a Holiday Inn for 2 weeks and then moved into an apartment. And long story short, I went to public schools. That was the option that was available to my parents at the time. It was a great option. They weren't the best schools in the country, but they were good schools. I did well. I graduated when I was 16. And then I moved on to a small liberal arts college where I earned a degree 4 years later in physics. And
where was that?
It was North Central College in Naperville, Illinois, so again outside of Chicago. And I pretty much had all the sciences covered. So I have a degree in physics with minors in chemistry and biology. And then worked for the Department of Energy for a couple years in superconductivity research.
Oh, wow.
And I'll tell you, you're going to find out how old I am. So this was back in 1988 is when I graduated. And then From college, right, exactly. And then as I was working for the Department of Energy, I saw...
I can hear people doing the math right now.
Are they?
Go ahead.
You have to know, I look okay, though. So as I was sitting there doing, junior assistant researcher, and there's this highway passing me by. It's called the Information Technology Highway.
Okay.
And I thought, you know what? This sounds like a good place to be. So I was working full time, and I went back to college, and I got another degree in computer science. So I worked for about 20 years before I decided to stay at home and have stay at home with my kids.
Okay.
And so I started out as a corporate instructor, moved on to I was teaching how to develop in mainframe assembler, again, showing everyone how old I am. But I did corporate instruction for a while, moved on to more technical things, network engineering, network management. I wanted to be a CIO. That was my goal, my career goal. And so I had a mentor at the time who told me the best thing for me to do is move on to a consulting firm. Yeah. So I did that, gained a lot of experience in people, project, and program management. Yeah. And was doing really well and felt like I was on my way to achieving that goal. Got married in the meantime and had a son. And when he was 2 years old, it just became a lot of juggling. My husband traveled about 50% of the time. I was traveling the other 50% of the time. And my mom stayed at home, and I thought, you know what, I'll try it. I'll try it and see how it goes. And I did. I quit, and it was hard. It was hard because my career was who I was. Right. And but I did it, and I loved it, and it's the best decision I ever made. But I will tell you, I think, unfortunately, there's this misconception that when a person who is in the workforce decides to stay home with her kids, that all those skills and all the tools that he or she has acquired over the years somehow magically vanish, and that's not true, because what I have done since I left the workforce, and this is about 11 years ago, is every skill set, everything that I have ever learned in the corporate world, that is what I use in my community and school volunteerism and activism.
Mita, I'm really interested in you I think all of us have a kind of a tendency to gloss over what we've done, and I was kind of losing you in some of the stuff that you had done, some of the actual positions that you had. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
What you said, you started off as a corporate.
I was a corporate instructor.
Okay, what did you do? What was a daily thing for you?
Yeah, so this is going back to 1990, and PCs were just really coming into the workplace. And so I originally had started teaching new hires how to code, how to do development and code. It was in machine language, which is very different than the script that they use today, the programming languages. So I did that for a little while, and then when PCs started becoming prevalent in the workplace, that's what I did. I taught how to use people how to use WordPerfect, Microsoft Excel, how to do a little bit of coding on the PC and all that. So that's what I started as a corporate instructor. And I will say one of the great things about this, and this is what I hone in my children, is the importance of learning how to speak in public.
All right.
Because it's not easy. It's not easy to stand up in front of a group of people, and whether they're kids or your peers or people that are older than you. But I think it's such an incredible skill to be able to have.
It's invariably the biggest fear that when they do the polling, that's the biggest fear of everyone
that and death
across
and paying
the board.
taxes, isn't it?
Well,
I don't know.
I'm not sure if they... but it's very true.
It is. And even today, I mean, I can't say I get nervous when I speak in front of a crowd, but it's certainly, I feel a sense of energy.
Right.
And you just have to make sure you channel that energy to be positive energy. I do always have to remind myself to talk a little bit slower. And that was, so I learned a lot.
Speed talker.
I can be very much of a speed talker if I wanted to be. And that is what I learned from that role, is really how to stand in front of a group of people and communicate information.
Right.
And also I learned how to listen, because when you're teaching, it's not just about spewing information. It's truly understanding, do they understand what you are trying to communicate to those individuals? I even had a woman who, one of my first questions was always, have you ever used a mouse before? Have you ever sat in front of a PC? And everyone nodded yes. And then we had our first little activity, and the woman picked up the mouse and started clicking it, and as if it were a remote control in front of the TV. I thought, okay, let's take a step back. So again, that was my first role, and this is at the natural gas company, at the natural gas utility company for the city of Chicago, People's Energy.
Okay.
And then moved on to network engineering and network administration.
Okay.
And so again, the big thing in the workplace was local area networks and the internet, and trying to share and collaborate information. So visited a lot of gas plants, making sure that their infrastructure was in place, and great skill set to acquire, really, on the technical side. And then when I moved into the consulting arena, I actually started out selling consulting services. I'd never been a salesperson before.
Right.
And I think what I learned there is you can't sell anything you don't believe in. Because if you don't believe in what you're selling, you shouldn't be doing it in the first place. Right. But I really did believe in it. We had a great model. I always say it's the best job I've ever had, because that's where I met my husband. So that's always a good thing. And we're still married, almost 17 years later.
How far along was it? When in your career did you start the kind of the shift in terms of...
So I was at the gas company for 6 years.
Okay.
I was at the gas company for 6 years, moved on to the consulting side, did sales for a little while, and then moved on to...
Same company, different company?
Same company.
Okay.
So this is now in 96. Started out in sales and moved on to more the project management, program management side of it.
And where are you guys in 96? Are you on...
I was in
Illinois?
Chicago,
Okay.
yeah. So I moved my husband. I didn't move him up. He chose to move up. Mm-hmm. He lasted 4 winters, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
And so in 96, moved there, moved to this new company, and moved on a couple years later into the project management, program management side. And again, the skill set that I acquired there was very much about how to... leading a project is complicated. It is complicated, whether it's a small project or a large project. You are managing staff. You are managing resources. You are managing resources that don't report to you. You are managing money. You are doing change control. There's so much to that when you're doing project management. And so it's a lot of organizational skills as well as, again, communication skills, because you have to be able to communicate to different members of your project as well as who you're reporting to. On the program management side, it's more of overseeing multiple projects and making sure that the overarching strategy is still being followed, making sure that the project is on task, on budget, delivering the hard news. If hard news needs to be delivered, hopefully everything's going on track. It never does. Yeah. But I will say that I did receive a number of accolades while I was working at the gas company as well as at Software Spectrum.
Okay.
So that was in 99, and then I left in 99, and the reason I left is because, again, there was another ship that was passing me by, and that was the internet startup. type of
Okay.
an organization.
Yeah.
And so I was recruited by a company called United Messaging, and what we sold was outsourced email services. And so it's basically like a Yahoo Mail or a Hotmail or Gmail, but for the corporate environment.
Okay.
And resources are expensive, especially technical resources. We had economies of scale. Email integrates with everything, so we really leveraged the technology there. It was a small company. We got acquired by another company called Agilera, then acquired by another company called Blue Star, then another company called ACS. And through all those acquisitions, I survived 6 CEOs and 14 RIFs, 14 furloughs. And so now moving forward, had gotten married, have a son now. So now we're talking 2002 is when Jake was born. And that's when my husband said, these winters are killing me. He grew up in Houston, outside of Houston.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even
Big
the
difference.
cold or the snow. It's the length of the winter.
Yeah.
It's April and you want it to be warm.
Yeah.
And you get that frost or that snow. And so he said, can you try Dallas? Can you just try it? Because he had a job opportunity down here. And I was working a job where I could work anywhere as long as I was a national resource. So as long as I was near an airport, that was fine.
Okay.
And so we bought our house in the M Streets in Dallas in 2003. Our son was 9 months old, and yeah, that's what I did for another year. And then my husband got an opportunity to move us to Sydney, Australia, with his job, and this is still with Software Spectrum. And so we decided to do it. We decided to rent out our house in the M Streets and try Sydney for a few years. And if you've ever been to Sydney, it's paradise. It was
I have not.
fantastic. Yeah, you should put it on your bucket list.
I've seen pictures.
Yeah. Pictures don't even do it justice. And
Yeah.
it was great, and our daughter was born there. And so we moved back to the States when she was 2.
Okay.
And I always thought it was interesting that she too was born overseas, but moved to the States almost to the same age as when I moved to the States.
So you say your husband was the one who took y'all to Sydney.
Yeah.
And what were you doing then?
So that's when I made the decision. So I did have the opportunity to continue working in Sydney. My company asked me to do project work.
Okay.
And I think they were kind of hoping for a 24 type of a day, with the time difference.
Uh-huh.
And I seriously considered it. I thought, this is. I should do this, and it's a financial hit to have a 2-income household and then just have one.
Right.
And so we looked at that, and then I really looked at the logistics of it all, and I thought, we don't know anybody in Sydney. We did not know a soul. Who's going to take care of Jake? I mean, he was 2 years old. You can't have a 2-year-old running around at home and work at the same time. And, and from a personal standpoint, I wanted to try the stay-at-home mom thing.
Sure.
I really did. And as I mentioned before, it wasn't easy because one of the first things that someone asks you when they meet you is, what do you do? And I'm embarrassed to say this now, but I was embarrassed to say that I was a stay-at-home mom.
Sure.
And the first time someone asked me that, I was with a friend, and someone said, hey, so what do you do? And I said, I just voluntarily took myself out of the workforce. And my friend looked at me and said, you've got to shorten that just a little bit. And now, I will tell you, I am very fortunate to be in that position.
Okay, so you guys came back from Sydney.
Yeah, so we came back in Sydney in 2008, just in time for the financial crisis.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And our plan was to travel for a while. My husband had elected to leave Software Spectrum, and he too wanted to go to a smaller firm.
Okay.
And unfortunately, with the whole crisis, the financial crisis that happened, it didn't quite work out that way. John did consulting for a little while, and then he landed at the company where he is now, called Comprex. It's a IT services organization headquartered in Leipzig, Germany.
Okay.
So he travels still a lot.
So you guys have 2 kiddos.
We do.
You mentioned Jake and your daughter.
My daughter's name is Ashna. She's 10. My son is 13. They just finished yesterday 4th grade and 7th grade. So high school's right around the corner for us after next year, which I'm a little...
Mita, I'm really interested in probably talking a little bit more about India and then you coming back and the kind of history behind that. And we're going to get back to that in a few. But let's give the listeners kind of an idea of what we're talking about.
Sure.
You're running for trustee.
I am.
For District 2. There are 9 members of the board. You're running for a portion, I guess, of the area, the District 2. Tell us a little bit about what your sense of what trustees are responsible for here in DISD. And this is, of course, Dallas Independent School District.
Right. The role of the board is governance, and that is a primary job of the board. And when you say governance, the board is not running the school district.
Right.
That is the job of the superintendent. So the board has one employee, and that is the superintendent. The board hires the superintendent, can fire the superintendent, and keeps the superintendent accountable. The board also helps with the strategic vision of how the district should go, and certainly is there as an oversight as well. The board also manages a $1.6 billion budget with the board as well. So those are the primary responsibilities of the board.
Okay, and if we could, I just want to give everyone an opportunity. As I think I mentioned earlier, there's not only folks listening from
Yes.
Dallas, they're kind of listening from around the country, and quite honestly, other countries, which we get those numbers and we say, hey, well, lots of people listening in South
Who
America.
want to
and
hear
other
about
places.
me running for trustee.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, but I'm sure the folks who are listening in specifically for this are concerned. This is a runoff election.
It is.
You actually ran with, I believe, 3 other folks initially, and it came down to you and another individual who's run in terms of the runoff. But I wanted to get folks who are listening in, you mentioned the budget and other things. I wanted to give them an idea of what the what DISD kind of looks like. So I just wanted to throw a couple of things out there. The as listed here in the DISD fact sheet, student ethnic composition, district-wide. Hispanics comprise of about 70% of the student population. African Americans comprise about 23%. And then white students are about 4.8%, Asian or about 1.3%, and then it kind of goes down from there. So what we're really looking at, in all honesty, in terms of across the board, is a big portion of the population are people of color, Hispanics and African Americans. Now, you're running for a specific district that is a little bit different in terms of its composition. Talk a little bit about that, and then I think kind of the responsibility of running for your district, and then, of course, taking DISD into consideration as a whole.
Sure, absolutely. So if you're familiar with Dallas, you live in Dallas, just to give you a brief overview of what the district looks like, it's a strangely shaped donut with the Park Cities, Highland Park and University Park, cut out in the middle. So it's a donut. We call it the donut.
Right.
And as you mentioned, the demographics of District 2 are considerably different than the demographics of the rest of the district.
Right.
And primarily because there's a vast part of that district that is middle class, above middle class, that is not mostly Hispanic. Unfortunately, the reason I believe that the demographics of the schools differ from the demographics of the district citizenry, the district population, is that many individuals, many families have chosen to send their kids to private schools rather than to public schools. So when you look at the demographics of the actual schools themselves, it's very different than the neighborhood population.
Right.
So yes, the demographics are very different from a population standpoint from the district, but if you look at it from a school population, it varies a bit because there are some areas that do buy into public schools, like East Dallas where you live, and then there are other areas that are more, the parents are more prone to send their kids to a private or parochial education.
Right.
So as far as the responsibility to the constituents of District 2 versus a district as a whole, so I believe my role as a DISD trustee is to the entire school district.
Okay.
It isn't, but it is hard to be a representative of the entire school district because it is so vast. It's almost 230 schools. It's 160,000 students. It's huge geographically. It's not just the city of Dallas. It goes into surrounding areas by Seagoville, up by Addison. So it's a large geographic area. So the school district has been broken down into 9 areas, and I am in District 2. And absolutely, my role as a District 2 trustee is to listen to my constituents, to understand what is going on in their schools, what's working, what's not working. One of the big things, one of the aspects that I really want to bring to all of DISD, and specifically to District 2, is community and parental involvement. I do find in the schools that are successful throughout our district, you have community involvement and you have parental involvement. And those are just the facts. I mean, it's not like when I was growing up where my parents didn't need to be involved in school. When you're in an urban public education school system, it doesn't matter what city you're in. If you can get more parental involvement, more community involvement, the chances of that school and therefore those students succeeding will accelerate.
Well, in all honesty, Mita, I know, I've got 2 older daughters who went to Stonewall Jackson, very good school, blue ribbon at the time. Went to the
Still
Long.
blue ribbon.
That's right. Went to Long, and then one went to Woodrow, one went to Tag, graduated from Woodrow and Tag. And now we've got 2 younger ones. One is at Long, and the other is at Lakewood. Very good schools.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, some of the best in the district, some of the best in DISD, quite honestly. tag is
the best in the country.
invariably the best in the country. So it's a situation where, quite honestly, for me, if I were living in another place, I quite honestly, if I had the means, which I probably do, I'd be sending my kids to a private school based on where my kids should be going. I think our district is one that doesn't need as much help with parental involvement, as much help in that area. Tell us a little bit about, you mentioned this was a big deal, and correct me if I'm wrong, certainly, but how we kind of, as a trustee, how we might be able to kind of, because I think we have wonderful, especially at Lakewood and Long, we have a lot of parental involvement. How do we kind of expand that to the rest of the district?
Well, I think what's important is to know that the community involvement that exists at Lakewood and at Stonewall, it's unique to those areas. Right. When people say, "Oh, let's just replicate what works at Stonewall because my kids went there," it won't work. It doesn't work because, again, the demographics don't support that. So we need to accept that fact that volunteer organizations will look different everywhere you go. Right. So I look at Dandy Rogers, for example, which is also in District 2. It's a little bit north of Stonewall, Jackson, and Lakewood. And there is a group of parents who have said, their children are just born 1 year old, 2 years old, and they have decided as a group they're going to do this. They are going to go to Dandy Rogers. They're already involved in the school. They already have formed their early childhood PTA. They meet with the principal. They know the teachers. And Dandy is a great school. It's now a personalized learning center. There's 18 languages that are spoken there. And it's a great, diverse environment. And so their volunteer organization will look different. There'll probably be one dozen people, a dozen people that are doing the heavy lifting for everyone, and they're okay with that. And they obviously want to include other members of the community, but know that when it comes to fundraising or it comes to involvement in the classroom, they will be in a position to be able to do that. When someone's working, when two parents are working 4 jobs between them, volunteering at schools is probably not what's primary on their list. Yeah. But if someone's in a different position, they can do that and help all the kids. I see what happened. I'm a party to what has been happening at Lipscomb Elementary, and I'd like to give that as an example. Surely. I think that's such a wonderful school, and I'm so excited about the trajectory that they're on, and I actually feel like they're pretty much there. So Lipscomb is in East Dallas, and it's part of that whole Woodrow Wilson feeder pattern. Yeah. And if you look at the demographics of Lipscomb, from an ethnic standpoint, from a socioeconomic standpoint, their demographics almost mirror the demographics of the district. Right. Okay, identically. And it's doing great. And it's doing great because you've got a great principal, you have a strong, effective leader in place who's confident enough to hire effective teachers and not worry about those teachers challenging her, asking questions, but at the same time supports her teachers and supports the programs that are being put in place, in this case specifically IB. Okay. And this is another example where you have about 10 parents or so that are doing that heavy lifting. And they realized that, and they were happy doing it, but they realized that they didn't often have quorum at PTA meetings. Right. People just weren't showing up. And so they decided to do something called potluck PTA. So every month they come, this group of parents, they come with their slow cookers filled with taco meat and cheese and chips and salsa, and they have a huge spread. And what do you know? The last PTA meeting I went to, there must have been at least 100 people there. And if you are a family where you are concerned about where your next meal is going to come from, or you're too tired to make dinner, sure, this is a great option for you to go to your school and have dinner. And I think what's so fantastic about this is that they didn't have the meal while the meeting was going on. They let everyone eat, everyone get settled, and then they started the meeting, and people didn't leave. Yeah,
I've heard of this, and I've heard of this program a number. Any idea when this started?
It was this year.
This year?
School year, yeah.
Okay. Any idea? Have you actually had an opportunity to speak with the parents who kind of got it going, or?
Yeah. Actually, I've been to a couple of their PTA meetings, and
anything unique about those folks that was?
What's unique is that they are in a position, from a time perspective as well as from a financial perspective, to be able to participate in that, okay, right? Because feeding 100 people is not an inexpensive thing to do, right? Sure. Having the time to organize events and having people come in to speak is not something that's simple to do. It takes time. And so in that school, there's a group of people that they realize they have the time, they have the skills, and they have the initiative and the need and the want to do this for the entire school. Yeah. They don't, and this is what's amazing, and I think this happens at, I know Stonewall is what I'm familiar with. The volunteers don't do it for their own kids. You know, I mean, my kids will be fine, right? You do it for the whole school population. And I think from a district perspective, that's why I'm running for school board. I'm not doing this for my kids. I'm not doing it for the East Dallas schools. I am doing this for the district as a whole.
Okay, Mita, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, and I really want to talk to you more specifically about some of the actual programs, the substantive programs here that we currently have in DISD, some of the things that you think about those and how they're going and how we might perhaps look to change those or modify them a little bit. But we're going to come back in about 2 minutes. Please rejoin us. Once again, we're talking with Mita Havlick, who is running for DISD trustee here in District 2. So 2 minutes, you guys come on back. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for rejoining us. This is Law for the People once again, and our special guest in-house is Miss Mita Havlick, and she is running for trustee of Dallas Independent School District here in Dallas. And Mita, we were talking before the break a little that we were going to kind of get into the substantive issues of what the reason why you're running, kind of what's going on. TEI, which I want you to go ahead and explain for the folks in a couple of seconds, is a big issue with respect to what's happening currently. As people may or may not know, kind of listening in, we've kind of transitioned into a new superintendent. With the past superintendent, of course, was Mike Miles, and he has left, and in so doing, they brought in another superintendent. You mentioned earlier that the trustees kind of have one employee, and that's the superintendent, so that's kind of a big deal. So tell us a little bit about what TEI is and some of the feelings that you might have regarding TEI.
Sure, absolutely. So the other responsibility of the board is to set policy, and, again, ensure that the superintendent adheres to those policies. So one of the policy changes that happened a couple years ago, under our previous superintendent is something called TEI, which stands for Teacher Excellence Initiative. Okay. And the goal of TEI is very simple. Let's make sure that we reward our great teachers. Let's make sure that the teachers that shouldn't be teaching, let's make sure that they're not in front of our kids anymore. Right. So I think the overarching strategy or overarching thought behind the TEI is a good one, because I've never been in a job where I'm not measured on some metric. When I was in my sales job, I was measured on my sales quota. When I was, a corporate instructor, I was measured on how I was evaluated as an instructor. And so I think evaluation is important, and I think that measuring is important. The thing with TEI, the way it's measured is that there's different components to it. One component is something called principal observations or administrator observations. So a principal and assistant principal goes into different classrooms 8-10 times a week to just kind of stand there and observe how the teacher is teaching. Right. Another component is student achievement. So there's a test at the beginning of the year, and there's a standardized test at the beginning of the year, a standardized test at the end of the year, and how that student grows in that year is part of the measurement for an evaluation. Right. Another component is student surveys. So we're asking kids to answer a survey on how they feel about their teachers. So those are some of the components of TEI. So I will say, first and foremost, I believe there has to be an evaluation system. And I've yet to meet a teacher who I would want to keep in the district who says, no, I don't want to be measured. Teachers don't mind being measured. What they want is a system that is equitable. Okay. And my feeling is that the current system, current TEI implementation as it is not equitable. Okay. And I'd like to explain why, if that's okay. Surely. So let's talk about principal observations. We'll start with that one. An effective principal knows who her effective teachers are. Okay. And the way TEI is set up is that there's a rubric, and every teacher has to be observed the same time, the same number of times, the same amount of minutes, all of that stuff. And I feel that, that takes away valuable administrative time that the principal should be administering her school rather than going into different classrooms. Okay. The principal should always reserve the right to go into any classroom she wants. The door should be open. The teacher can the principal can walk in and observe her teachers. Okay. I have no issue with that. The issue I have is, again, the time that it takes away from the administrator, but also in physics, there's something called the observer effect, which is when an object is observed, it causes a phenomenon. So, and my daughter always says that she could tell when the principal's walked into the room and her back is to the door, because all of a sudden the demeanor changes a little bit and the voice changes a little bit.
Like boiling water. It won't boil if you're looking at it.
If you look at it, okay, I get it. I'm like, no,
That's
from a
the
physics
opposite, yeah.
perspective, water does boil.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's the most accurate of measurements when you're trying to put it into a matrix. So that's one issue. The other issue I have is the whole, the student surveys. Now we're asking kids who are 7, 8 years old to say, what do I think about my teacher? So if you like your teacher, you're going to tend to rate them higher. If you're a bleeding heart, like my daughter is, you're going to tend to rate them all wonderfully. If you're like my son, who will rate a teacher based on his last grade, then maybe not the case. And so I don't think it's necessarily appropriate to have our younger kids. I think in high school, I think it's appropriate, but definitely not in elementary school and even in middle school.
Okay.
I don't think they're at that maturity level to look at it holistically, because the teachers I remember in school are the ones who were not necessarily the easiest teachers I had. They weren't my favorite teachers at the time, but I look back and I think about how much I learned from them. Now, there are other teachers that were amazing, they were creative, they made class fun, and unfortunately, the way TEI is, imagine if you're a teacher and you're having, you're teaching a creative lesson in your classroom and your principal walks in, but that's not what you're supposed to be teaching. You're supposed to be teaching this component of the TEAC. And then all of a sudden you're marked on your rubric because you're not teaching what you were supposed to be teaching. So my question is, are we taking creativity out of the classroom?
Okay.
The other thing with TEI is that teachers are now, because everyone has to fit into a bell-shaped curve. This is a merit-based system. It's pay for performance. So you're asking everyone to fit into a bell-shaped curve because funds are limited. You can't give everyone an excellent rating, even if everyone deserves an excellent rating. And so what you will have now is teachers competing against each other. And teaching is not a solo sport, it's a team sport. And what works well in schools is when teachers work together, they create the curriculum at the grade level, they have communication between grades to make sure there's vertical alignment. And so when you have a program that is de-incentivizing that, I think that's an issue.
Okay.
So I feel that the current implementation of TEI definitely needs to be looked at. We have had an incredible amount of teacher turnover. We've had 60% of our teachers leave over the last 3 years. Think about that. We have 10,000 teachers and 6,000 have left. That's a huge vacancy. And what that is showing to me is that we're not an employer of choice. We have a hard time recruiting new teachers who want to come from a different district. We do have pipelines where we recruit young teachers or people who haven't been in the classroom before, and they want to see if teaching is for them. But we need teachers at all levels. We need the young teachers who come in energetic, they're exciting, and we need the teachers who have been there for a long time because they have a lot of valuable information that the younger teachers can glean.
Let me
from.
ask you this. I know I've had an opportunity to speak with Miles before he left, and on a number of occasions. He basically told us, my mission from the board was to come in and get rid of the teachers that didn't belong.
Yep.
How much of that was a portion of our loss of teachers, and how much of it do you think, because you've been doing this and you've been looking into it and kind of talking to teachers, talking perhaps to teachers who have left.
Absolutely.
How much of that do you think is based on, one, okay, we're going to get rid of the dead weight, and two, let's figure out how many of the teachers are leaving because of the setup in terms of TEI.
And I think that's such a great point, because we did get rid of what you just called deadwood. We did.
Yeah.
We did get rid of teachers who it was very clear to them they should not be teaching, which is a good thing,
okay.
right? But there was collateral damage, and that collateral damage is you have long-term principals who chose to retire early, and not just one or two, but a number of long-term principals who decided to retire early because they didn't want to micromanage their teachers,
okay.
especially the ones that are effective. And I would love to know the statistics of how many teachers left because they're incredibly effective, but they felt marginalized. And, teachers, everyone wants to get paid for their job, but teachers generally, like nursing, you don't go in it for the money, right? You do it because you get paid, but also there is a calling. You feel that you can make the world a better place. And when you do that, and you do it to the best of your ability, and then you're not recognized for it, much less rewarded for it, there's a feeling of feeling marginalized, and that's an issue. One of the things that I would love to have happen is I would love because teachers and principals, they really, and this is a good thing, you can't disparage the district while you're working here. And that's fine. But let's find those teachers who have left. Let's find those principals who decided to retire early or go to another district. Let's do a roundtable with them.
Yeah.
Let's figure out, okay, now what didn't work? What parts did work and what parts didn't work? So let's do that. One of the things I would like to see is more of a of a 360 type of a review process, where you're not just doing an evaluation from the top down, but also peer-to-peer reviews. Because if you're with a team and there's one person that's not performing, if you have team reviews, you can pretty much single that person out. I would also like to see evaluations from the bottom up as well. And part of the reason is there are principals that are out there that shouldn't be in schools either, and that's another way to find that out.
Okay.
And I'd like to just say one more
Sure,
thing about.
sure.
About Principal Miles. One of the things that Superintendent Miles.
Right.
We have this evaluation system, but we also got rid of professional development. So to me, a function of evaluation system is not just reward and get rid of the dead wood, but there's that big swath in the middle. How do we move those teachers up, the ones that are progressing? We need to, and thank goodness it's come back, is our professional development area and department.
Yeah, Mike Miles left relatively recently. They brought back in Hinojosa. Dr. Hinojosa, who was here before.
Yep.
He comes back in. How do you think he's doing currently in terms of because a lot of the programs implemented by Miles are still ongoing?
Yep.
TEI being one of them, of course. How do you think he's doing? What kind of job do you think he's doing so far?
Well, I will say I always say I have a legacy relationship with Dr. Hinojosa. My son's kinder year, we all of a sudden had a $60 million shortfall, and at Stonewall Jackson Elementary, where we have this renowned garden program, which is our science curriculum, was cut. So we came to school in the morning, dropped off our kids, everything was fine. Picked up our kids. There's news cameras there saying, "Sorry, you don't have a garden anymore. What are you going to do?" Mr. Painter, who had started there, and so long story short, we as a community would not let that die. I did not spearhead that effort, but I joined the team of parents who did save that garden, and now it's a 501(c), and it is managed by the district but funded privately with donation funds. Okay. So I think that Dr. Hinojosa has been essential in helping teachers feel comfortable in wanting to stay in the district. Okay. He is an exceptionally intelligent man. He's an exceptionally personable man. He's a great communicator. And so I feel that the teachers are breathing a sigh of relief. The ones that were thinking about leaving, thinking, okay, things will be okay. And while we still have TEI in place, I'm happy to see that there are adjustments being made to TEI. So I think those are good things. I also am a part of the Miles era were these choice schools and transformation schools, and I am a huge proponent of those. I think we do need to offer choices to our parents. If their neighborhood school is not a good fit for their kids, there is another type of a learning environment that may be, whether it's IB, Personalized Learning Center, a science curriculum, STEM curriculum, et cetera. So I'm a big proponent of that. Superintendent Miles brought that in. I think that's fantastic, and I love the fact that Dr. Hinojosa is continuing that. I also I'm so excited about the partnership with the Dallas Community Colleges, with our collegiate academies that we're having. Right now, it'll only be open to about 900 students, but by the time you get your graduation degree, your high school diploma, you could also have your associate's degree, and basically paid for free. So I think those are great programs. Programs cost money. So that's my concern, is that we're putting in a lot of programs. How are we funding the programs? And what I noticed at the last budget meeting is that what is getting cut are teacher allocations and classroom resources. And I have an issue with that, because in my mind, the best way to achieve student achievement is to have an effective teacher in a classroom with resources.
Okay. Not to put you on the spot, but you're, of course, applying for the job of being the employer of Dr. Hinojosa. In terms of what you've seen so far, is he someone that you as a trustee would kind of get behind, or is it something that you're looking, is he doing enough? Is he moving in the right direction in your sense?
The last thing I want to see is another change in the superintendent. I want consistency. I think Dr. Hinojosa is someone that I will absolutely support and absolutely keep accountable.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had mentioned the testing as well.
Yes, that was the next thing that I wanted to get into, talk a little bit about was testing. And I don't think it's any unknown that you have clearly been against some of the numbers of testing that we have. Why don't you give us a little background of what currently is in place, what are the requirements, what are our kids doing in terms of the testing, and then kind of talk about those specific tests and whether or not you think they're the right thing or just too much.
Sure, absolutely. Now, the testing varies depending on the grade level. So you have elementary testing, middle school, and then high school. So I won't explain each one in detail, but just kind of use one as a anecdotal undoubtedly. So right now, for a majority of our students, for all of our students, there's a mandated test by the state called the STAR, and it's mandated by the Texas Education Agency. So the kids have STAR exams at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, and again, it's mandated by the district or by the state. So part of TEI is to measure student achievement. The way they measure student achievement is not by the improvement in the STAR testing, but a different test, a new test that the district creates called the ACPs.
Right.
And so these ACPs happen again in the fall and at the end of the school year. And what most recently has happened, the last term of the school, it's a 6-week term. So at the beginning of the 6 weeks, the kids are preparing for the STAR exam. The teachers aren't teaching, they're preparing their kids for the STAR exam because it's important. The kids then spend, a cycle of a week or two taking the test. Now, they don't take the test for the whole 2 weeks, but their school is in what we call lockdown mode, which is basically where kids don't get to go from class to class because they can't make noise. They don't get to go out for recess. The library's closed, and often in schools because your librarian is your testing coordinator. Counseling services aren't available in some schools because now your counselor is your testing coordinator.
Okay.
So there's impacts to every student within that, whether you're taking the test or not. So now imagine that a child has just finished taking the STAR exam, breathes a sigh of relief because that test is finished, and then all of a sudden has to turn around and start preparing for the ACPs. And the ACPs are, again, tests that the kids have to take. They're created by the district, and they're learning how to take the ACPs, they're getting prepared for the ACPs, and then they take the ACPs. And my son had his last ACP the last day of school.
Yeah.
And and you could say the last day of school is going to be a wash because it'll be fun anyway, but there is very little teaching that is going on in the last 4 to 5 weeks of school. There's little teaching going on in that same 4 to 5 weeks in the fall. And teachers want to teach. They want to be in front of their kids. And I understand that there's a state mandated test, and that's fine, even though we've had issues with the STAR test this year. But at the same time, the core competency of our district is not creating tests. That is not what we do. And the cost of the ACPs is astronomical. I've heard anywhere from $2 million to $8 million. And those are probably just hard numbers. You look at the cost of, again, school administrators trying to juggle their staff to make sure that a teacher is not proctoring her own students' exams. There's a cost of facilities management. Facilities management cannot go out to schools while they're in test mode. They cannot complete a work order because that school is in the middle of a testing program.
Let me see if I can make this real clear before we go off the air. Mita, STAR testing is something that the trustees don't control. It's state mandated.
No, we could definitely lobby the state.
Lobby the state to not have a STAR testing. I guess that's a possibility.
It's a possibility.
But in terms of
that's not
control,
my focus.
Right? Yeah, we don't really have any control over that. But with respect to the ACP, that's district mandated.
That's district mandated.
And is that something that trustees would vote on, or is that something that the superintendent brings and creates policy? Is it introduction of policy and then the trustees vote? How does that work?
Right, so it's all wrapped up in the TEI policy right now. So yes, it is policy driven.
Okay.
It is absolutely policy driven. So again, it's and we used to have ACPs just in the type of ACPs in the high schools, but we brought it down to the middle school and the elementary school level.
Okay.
And to me, that is where teaching needs to happen. It has to happen at all levels, but you need to. These young kids, they need to interact with their teachers.
Let's see if we can't play devil's advocate to a certain extent. And what is the stated mission of the ACPs? What is the purpose of it? You mentioned the in conjunction with the TEI, but tell us a little bit about what that's supposed to be.
Sure. One of the measurements for a teacher's evaluation is student achievement. So that is what it's measuring. It is measuring student growth.
Okay.
And student outcomes eventually.
Okay.
That's what we're doing.
And as a trustee, you would do what with respect to testing? What do you think would be your kind of
Well, again,
mandate?
I think it falls right back into the teacher evaluation.
Okay.
If we need to measure, which we should, measure student achievement, is the ACP the best way to measure that? You can do assessments without doing standardized testing.
Okay.
And so you could have a benchmark at the beginning of the year, something at the end of the year. We could use the STAR exam. We could do something. And my thought is, my belief is, and I will tell you it's a belief of most parents, the last thing we need is more standardized testing in our schools.
Okay.
And there's a reason why private schools and charter schools don't do all this.
Don't do it, yeah. Okay, Mita, we're going to give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit more about when you're running, when the vote is coming in, who's actually voting, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the voting process with respect to you and what's about to happen.
Sure, absolutely. We're very much in get out the vote mode. Early voting starts Monday, June 6th to the 14th, with Election Day on June 18th.
Okay.
And there were close to 6,300 votes cast in the May 7th election, which forced the runoff, which is funny, which sounds like a big number, but when you think there's 87,000 registered voters, it's only about 7% of the constituency. Generally, the number of votes cast in a runoff is less than in the election. I'm really hoping that people come out to vote. We need to come out to vote because this is such a critical election. The board is setting policy that affects all of our kids. We have two choices here, either to stay where we are on a course that isn't necessarily working or turn the ship in the right direction and continue forward. So it's so critical to go out and vote. Again, June 6th through the 14th is early vote, and the great thing about early voting is you just go on to DallasCountyVotes.org, find a polling location, and go. You don't even have to go to your own polling location. And then on Election Day, you do need to go back to DallasCountyVotes.org and find out exactly where your polling location is. Again, really critical to vote. We are a grassroots organization. We did not fundraise crazily. We fundraised enough to create signs, to make signs and mailers, as well as palm cards, push cards. But every single member of my campaign team is a volunteer. I have 11 people on what I call my cabinet, my kitchen cabinet, and I have over 160 active volunteers. And those are people that have that go poll greeting, who put up our signs, who've hosted coffees, who are canvassing, who are phone banking. I mean, these are people who are working, and I'm so proud of this team. And it has been a team journey, and certainly not a solo effort on my part. So
well,
please vote.
I've got to say, where I live, that's all I really see is all your signs everywhere, Mita. So thank you so much for coming on. Have you checked out the sample ballot? What else
have.
Who else is on there? Is there anything in the district?
There's nothing else on the ballot except if there's a sliver of District 2 that overlaps with the Dallas Community College's election as well.
Yes.
So if you see that on the election, there could be two things. I'm first on the ballot. Okay. So if you don't remember my name, just vote for the first person that you see.
Very important. And what was the actual day of the voting again?
June 18th.
June 18th.
Yes,
okay.
And the next day after you vote, you can celebrate Father's Day.
All right. Well, Mita Havlick was our guest today. Thank you so much for coming on, and good luck in the upcoming election, and the best from all of us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Guys, we're going to come back in about 2 minutes with our second guest, Don Gonzalez. So please rejoin us in about 2 minutes. Thank you so much.